All right, welcome to another behind the scene series. So today we are taking a look at the planet system, the planetary series. So as you can see here, I made 3 projects with Mars, the Moon, and Jupiter. I did follow a couple of tutorials to be able to create the atmosphere, even though there's a lot of things that I couldn't create properly, but I will have some of these tutorials down below. As you can see here with Blender Guru, he is using the earth texture with a lot of big texture that you can download for free. Unfortunately, when it comes to distributing these files, I am not really allowed to have big files to share. So I think the max file size that I can have is 250 megabytes. So that's why most of my files are very small in size, and I'm trying to not add everything into a single file, because otherwise I won't be able to share it for free on my Gumroad. So that's the only limitation. But I highly recommend to go and watch the tutorials that I will have down in the descriptions. But for these 3 projects, I used very small maps that you can find here in the solarsystemscope.com. So I used the let's see, the Mars one, which is a 4K, which is an 8K texture. I used the Moon texture, which is 8K, and for Saturn, I found a higher resolution. I think it was 10K resolution on Google somewhere. But yeah, I think it was free from NASA, so I added this inside of the project file. So yeah, I will have this down in the description as well. So let's take a look. First of all, I want to talk about how this map looks like. I mean, this looks nice. And yeah, for a very small map, I did a really great job, with my lighting and also the color correction process. But I didn't have the same luck with the Moon. As you can see, the Moon, it was really hard to kind of maintain this realistic look. So I added a very small amount of a displacement. And Jupiter, if Jupiter, it's a gas giant, so usually it's a little bit harder to create. And as you can see here, we can see the displacement bump. So that's why I kind of zoomed out a little bit more for this one. So yeah, let's take a look at the Mars one, so Valles Marineris, which is the name of the canyon here. So we have a sun, we have our atmosphere and planet. So the atmosphere, if I take this off, even just like that, it looks fine. But I wanted some kind of atmosphere to kind of cover up the dark spots and make it a little bit more, gloom inside of the planet. Of course, Mars doesn't have an atmosphere, but this looks nice. And I'm going to close off my atmosphere. I'm going to go to the planet, and the planet, I think, is simply a shader. Yeah, there's no geometry node, it's just the shader. And as you can see, I have a principal BSDF, I have a displacement node, I have here my map, so 8K map. We have the color map, goes to the base color, and we add this inside of a separate color. We get the red and green. We add this value together. We add a greater than, and I put that inside of the roughness to be able to add some roughness. As you change that, you get a lot more roughness into it. So it really depends what you're looking for. For me, I think I added this at 0.6 or 7. And I love that it has this kind of separation here. After that, I added the map inside of a color ramp and a displacement. And inside of displacement, I add a very small amount of displacement. So let's zoom in. inside of the canyon. I want to show you how the displacement looks like. So as you can see, there's a very small amount of displacement, right? If you zoom really close, you can actually see that the map is starting to deform here. Something else that I added was a noise texture inside of the normal, because I wanted to add a couple more details. For me it looked a little bit flat like that, so I wanted to add some more details. So you don't really need that, but I just like the way it looks. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the background. If you go inside of the world, so you can go here, object world. I added in 8K stars, so the stars can also be found on the page that I have down in the description. And next, for the atmosphere, I'm going to enable it. I'm going to go to world, and this is kind of the atmosphere that's happening. So it's a volume scatter. Inside of that volume, I have a hue saturation with a little bit of hue, because I wanted to make it something a little bit more neutral color. So 0.9. And inside of the density, there's a couple of things happening. We first of all take the geometry of our sphere. We put a distance inside of a clamp value, a power multiply. So for the density, we have this setup, and to be honest, I don't really understand it. I followed a tutorial to be able to create the atmosphere, but I'm not sure I made it properly. Even without the density, you pretty much have this nice kind of gradient here on the atmosphere. And as you can see, my atmosphere is a little bit bigger than the planet, so we can actually see it. And if we add here our density, yeah, so I don't really know what's happening with the geometry, distance, map range, power, and multiply. I couldn't really talk about what's happening here, so be sure to watch also the tutorial from Blender Guru, because he kind of gives more inputs into what this does. But apart from that, this is pretty much the project. And something that I did was to set the feature set to experimental, and that helps for the planet to be able to subdivide it adaptively, right? So that's pretty much it. Inside of the render settings in the subdivision tab, you can actually set up the max subdivision. So by default, I think it's set to 12, but be sure to lower this first, otherwise it's going to take forever to render and subdivide your mesh. So yeah, have that in mind. All right, so let's take a look at the second one, Copernicus, which is the crater here on the moon. I'm going to hit render. As you can see, we have the same setup. We have our sun, the planet, and our atmosphere. So the moon doesn't have atmosphere, so I think even without that, it would have looked okay. I'm going to go to the planet, and something that I did differently is that since this is a very low render, I wanted to kind of blur out the texture, and in order to blur the texture, you need to have this setup here. So you pretty much take the texture coordinate mapping, where you put that inside of a linear light. So this is a mixed color with a noise texture set with a high scale, and this will kind of blur, this will distort the image and create kind of a blur effect, a kind of fake blur. So if I take up this, so now you see the difference, right? This was a little bit too rough for me. So if we add the blur setup, it's going to add a noise and kind of smooth out the texture displacement, right? So this goes inside of the color ramp and displacement. And next we have separate, add, and greater than inside of the roughness to be able to control the roughness. So yeah, I left this 0.1, 0.2, 0.1 is okay. And that's pretty much it. So I didn't add any noise. And yeah, I have the same sky texture. And that's it for the moon. And let's get inside of the great red spot. So for this render, I wanted to have very small stars, and I wanted to have a camera with a, so let's see my camera, where is my camera? Here. With a big focal length. The issue was that the stars was too big to be able to fit into this composition. So I decided to add a plane just behind my planet and project the stars on top of that. So this is how I was able to achieve this kind of smaller stars here. We have the atmosphere, again with exactly the same setup and the density fall off that I don't really understand yet. So I'm going to close this off. We have our star plane. So I just added a star map inside of the color emission. We have a sun and we have our planet. So the planet, I think this is the most straightforward. I just have the texture map inside of the base color, roughness to full, and a slight displacement. And that's pretty much it, you know, not a lot to say about that. So yeah, this is the planet series, a very small video because it's pretty straightforward, you know. There's one map and one sphere with some atmosphere, basic atmosphere, and a star map as an HDRI. So yeah, that's it for this behind the scene. And I will see you guys in the next one. Cheers.